Men are taught to believe that constant presence and instant replies prove love, yet the human brain doesn't work that way. When attention is predictable and endless, the reward system flattens. Dopamine thrives on anticipation, not saturation, and the absence of suspense rewires her brain to take you for granted. Neuroscience shows that the orbitofrontal cortex lights up more from expectation than from the guaranteed outcome. This is why she feels a spark when you are slightly out of reach, but disinterest when you're always available. Loss aversion also plays a role. People fight harder to keep what they fear losing than what they already possess. Constant reassurance may feel safe, but it erodes tension, and tension is the fuel of attraction. Without space, desire collapses into routine, and routine is death to romantic intensity. A man who withdraws strategically isn't cold, he's preserving polarity. He understands that his time, attention, and presence only gain value when they aren't handed out without limit. By resisting the cultural myth of relentless availability, he keeps her chasing, keeps her imagination engaged, and most importantly, he keeps the fire alive. Revealing everything too soon may feel like honesty, but in reality it short-circuits attraction. When a man unloads his full story, his pain, his dreams, and his heart all at once, he floods the interaction with oxytocin, creating an illusion of closeness that hasn't been earned. True intimacy isn't built in one night, it's cultivated through pacing, through the gradual layering of vulnerability. Psychology calls this the Zeigarnik effect. People remain hooked on what feels unfinished. A man who knows how to sequence his emotions becomes like a novel you can't stop reading, each chapter leaving you restless for the next. The same way music uses silence to give meaning to sound, restraint gives power to disclosure. What is withheld today carries more weight when revealed tomorrow. By revealing in stages, you don't just build trust, you build tension, curiosity, and investment. She leans in, not because she has all of you, but because she feels there's more to uncover. Strategic vulnerability is not about being closed off, but about controlling the rhythm of revelation so that the bond deepens naturally instead of being forced. Most men fear silence, rushing to fill every gap with words, texts, or explanations. But silence itself is a weapon when understood. A pause in conversation, whether face-to-face or through delayed responses, forces her brain to work. Projection bias kicks in, she begins assigning meaning to your stillness, often imagining emotions, motives, or depth that may not even be there. In digital communication, the same principle becomes addictive. When replies are not instant, her dopamine system operates on variable interval reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes slot machines irresistible. Each delay sharpens her craving for the next response. Beyond behavior, silence signals composure. A man who is comfortable with pauses reveals emotional regulation, broadcasting that he is not desperate for approval or reaction. His calm energy triggers a subtle dominance effect. He cannot be shaken, rushed, or manipulated into breaking his frame. The stillness becomes louder than words, projecting confidence without performance. Women feel the weight of that silence because it contrasts sharply with the constant noise of attention they receive from others. The man who embraces silence teaches her that not every moment demands speech, and that power often lives in what is withheld, not what is said. A man who builds his life around a woman quickly loses his edge, because neediness is the fastest trigger for her subconscious repulsion circuits. She may not verbalize it, but her nervous system detects desperation and instinctively pulls away. Attraction is not born from clinging, it grows when a man is firmly centered in his own mission. A purpose-driven life creates its own gravitational pull, drawing her in not because he seeks her validation, but because he is already fulfilled. This independence generates social proof scarcity. His time is limited, his energy selective, and she must compete for entry into his world. Mirror neurons ensure that his passion bleeds into her perception of him, making his fire contagious. She begins to see him as a figure of aspiration rather than dependence. By placing his dreams, health, and self-possession first, he forces her to recontextualize her role in his life, not as the center, but as a valuable addition. This shift is powerful. She doesn't just admire him, she craves the stability and excitement of orbiting a man who cannot be consumed by her. True irresistibility emerges not from chasing, but from living so fully that she desires to chase him. Attraction thrives in the gap between wanting and having. When a man gives everything too quickly, his time, attention, affection, he unintentionally shuts down the very dopamine loops that fuel desire. The brain needs a rhythm of approach and withdrawal, closeness and distance, to keep craving alive. This is where the 90-10 rule becomes powerful, offering near total presence but maintaining a sliver of unpredictability. That 10% of withdrawal keeps her guessing, keeps her working for reassurance, and transforms his attention into something scarce. Psychology calls this effort justification. When she invests more to earn his presence, her mind concludes he must be valuable. The chase becomes self-reinforcing. The more she works, the more she convinces herself he is worth it. Distance, too, acts like a magnifying glass. Through telescoping bias, time apart intensifies her perception of his importance, making every reunion feel amplified. A man who engineers this gap doesn't do it out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. He understands that unchecked availability dulls passion, while controlled restraint sharpens it. By balancing closeness with subtle absence, he becomes unforgettable, not because he overwhelms her with affection, but because she never feels she fully owns him. Most men rush to smooth over discomfort, thinking that resolving every emotional spike will bring peace, but in reality it kills attraction. Tension, when held with composure, is not destructive, it is magnetic. When a woman spirals into emotional storms, her nervous system seeks a container strong enough to absorb the chaos. A man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't try to instantly fix or appease, becomes that container. This is where limbic resonance comes into play. Her emotional energy syncs with his calm state, and his regulated prefrontal cortex begins to soothe her amygdala. The delayed resolution creates a psychological debt. The relief she eventually feels is tied to him, binding her more deeply. Like a cliffhanger in a story, unresolved tension keeps the mind hooked, searching for closure. When he finally chooses to release the tension, the relief feels amplified, almost addictive, because of the contrast he allowed to build. This is the alchemy of attraction, turning discomfort into desire, volatility into trust. A man who can hold space for unresolved states without panic proves his strength, and that strength makes him unforgettable. She doesn't just want the resolution, she wants him as the source of it. Predictability is comforting, but comfort alone breeds boredom. The human brain craves novelty, and when a man becomes too routine, her attention drifts elsewhere. Controlled unpredictability interrupts this pattern. When he shifts between warmth and reserve, attention and distance, her brain is forced into attentional reloading, engaging higher cognitive functions to track him. This unpredictability activates dopaminergic reward prediction errors, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. She can't quite predict when he will be affectionate or when he will step back, and that uncertainty keeps her hooked. Unlike chaos, which destroys trust, strategic inconsistency is measured. It's enough to keep her intrigued without eroding her sense of safety. He becomes a cognitive tax, occupying her thoughts because her brain is compelled to solve the puzzle of his behavior. Every moment feels charged with possibility because she cannot settle into autopilot with him. This transforms him into a man who feels larger than life, not because he is always present, but because he bends her attention around his rhythm. By refusing to be predictable, he keeps desire alive, making her chase the next unpredictable spark he may ignite. Compliments feel good, but when they are handed out without restraint, they quickly lose their impact. The brain filters constant praise into background noise, stripping it of value. Scarcity is what makes validation powerful. When a man reserves his approval and only offers it when it is truly earned, the effect becomes electric. Psychology shows that earned recognition activates the nucleus accumbens, releasing dopamine and embedding the compliment as a reward rather than casual information. Operant conditioning ensures that she begins to adjust her behavior to seek more of that rare validation, unconsciously striving to meet his standards. His words become status tokens, elevating her sense of self-worth precisely because they are not freely given. This transforms simple praise into something she craves, a sign that she has penetrated his guarded selectivity. Unlimited compliments make him blend into the crowd of men who constantly flatter her, selective ones set him apart as someone whose approval must be earned. By withholding and then rewarding at the right moments, he positions his attention as a scarce currency. She learns that his validation is not a given but a prize, and that chase makes her more invested in holding on to him. Permanence kills attraction. When a man signals that he will always be there, her brain registers security, not desire, and mate value diminishes. The ultimate demonstration of self-worth comes from the willingness to walk away. Visible exit potential triggers deep psychological responses. Dread theory suggests that the possibility of loss intensifies her investment, her attention, and even her admiration. Walking away is not rejection, it is costly signaling, proving that he values himself more than any relationship. This act paradoxically aligns with female hypergamy. Women are drawn to men who are scarce, independent, and self-assured. His absence becomes a presence in her mind, creating tension, longing, and re-evaluation of his importance. The space he leaves forces her to confront her feelings and recognize the gravity of his worth. By setting firm boundaries and demonstrating that connection is optional, he rewrites the rules of engagement. She begins to chase him not out of manipulation, but because his value has been tangibly proven through restraint. In essence, walking away is the ultimate act of attraction. It transforms his independence into a magnetic force, compelling her to invest emotionally while he maintains control over his own life.